Anyway, we're going to turn now to what feels like the most hotly anticipated rematch of recent times. That's Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez, who are getting set to renew hostilities in Las Vegas this weekend.
118 to 110 for Canelo. 115, 113 for Triple G.
Triple G, Canelo says no.
114, 114, a three-way split. This is officially a draw.
118, 110 for Canelo. That did not happen. That is fiction. How is that a draw?
I did not have Canelo winning the fight.
Triple G won the fight.
You'd rather lose a fight than draw.
Huge right hand, calm down.
Canelo will make it look so easy. It will erase any doubt.
Of course I want a rematch. I want big drama show.
Told you, son.
The biggest fight in boxing. Two elite stars. Look my belt. I still champion. I want a fight. I want a true fight.
There you have it. So just days to go now until that rematch takes place. And I know both of you watched or rewatched the fight there recently. Did your opinion of the scorecards change on second viewing? Or
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was very emotional after the fight. It was early in the morning. I obviously was knackered from staying up to watch it. And I was sure Golovkin won it by three rounds. Watched it back last week. And I thought, oof, that is a lot closer than I remember. Maybe you could just give it to Golovkin by 1 round.
yeah, it seemed like most of the boxing media, or arguably the mainstream media, was kind of banging the drum that Golovkin was robbed. But I remember you came in possibly the Monday after and just said, that was a very close fight. And that was my feeling at the time. I thought maybe 7-5 Golovkin, something like that. And that, when I rewatched it, it was similar. Like, it seemed, strangely, considering he's one of the biggest names in the sport, he seemed a little bit overawed by the occasion, because he'd obviously been blowing these guys away, but Canelo was more used to he'd fought Floyd Mayweather obviously, so he was used to the grandiose nature of the event. And the first 3 rounds, Golovkin just never really got going, did he?
I wouldn't say it was the event. I think it was what Canelo was doing in front of him.
Right.
That really, it was probably a little bit of the event, maybe the build up and all that. But also what he was seeing in front of him was better, or wasn't like he had faced before, because Canelo was always in position. Although, first round he kind of retreated, but he was always in position. And then after, say, the first minute, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, he starts holding his ground. And in some senses, he's not really pushing Golovkin back, but he's holding his feet the whole time. And anything that Golovkin did, it was a counter, and they were coming back hard and fast, and from different angles, and that will stop any, you're not going to throw punches if you know that there's a fella in front of you who's going to make you pay for it, So I think that's why he started so slow. Traditionally, he's not been a slow starter, Golovkin. He usually goes straight to work. He might let a guy, when he's been fighting those guys who he's able to do it, he might let a guy touch him for a little bit, let it so he can just feel something on his chin and adapt, and then know what he's dealing with. Then he takes them out. But no, I think it was what Canelo tired during the middle rounds, and Golovkin had that really good period in the middle. But there's an argument that Canelo won the first 3 rounds, and after that, then 4 and 5, they're kind of here and there, and then Golovkin wins those middle rounds, and then the last 3 rounds, Canelo definitely win. I think he wins 10, and he definitely wins 12 for me. 11 is arguable again. So, the fight was overshadowed by that scorecard by Adelaide Bird, and it really did this fight a disservice, because it was a classic. In terms of skill level and athleticism, what was on show, it was a classic fight.
This could be even better, right?
This could be better. Now, all that's happened in between, it makes for a better fight. There's been some little bit of needle between them. I wouldn't say bad mouth, but a little bit,
Yeah.
And it will make for a better fight.
And have you any issue with the ethics around it at all? Like the fact that, do you have any problem with Canelo getting such a big payday in such a big primetime spot after it's only 6 months since he was banned?
Yeah, absolutely. His Mexican beef. If he wins on Saturday and he's the first fighter to defeat Golovkin, you'd be very sympathetic towards Golovkin, because you'd be thinking in other sports he would have been thrown out.
Yeah.
Or certainly for a bit longer. But money talks, and they'd be thinking Golovkin's not getting any younger. The first fight was good. I'd say as well, Canelo's camp probably felt very good after the first fight, thinking, you know, he took the best shots at Golovkin, and, you know, he was able to stand with him toe to toe. And when they fight a year down the line, Golovkin's a year older, and Canelo will probably be a lot more confident going into it.
And Golovkin's obviously on the last lap of his career now, but you have experience with him in the amateurs. You boxed him a while ago. Did you know there was something special on your hands when you were fighting him, or was it just another Eastern
I had no
European?
idea who he was, you know, and I wasn't even aware that Kazakh were a strong nation in boxing, you know, Kazakhstan, and it was second fight in the World Championships, and yeah, I was just did my best just to hang in there with him, you know. I was getting hit and I didn't even know where the punches were coming from, you know. He was an aggressive counter puncher as an amateur. He's kind of adapted his style now. He's more of a pressure fighter as a pro. But like you said, what's happened in between? It would only have benefited Canelo. This whatever was 6 months off.
Yeah.
Golovkin's had a fight in between that, so he's had another training camp and he's had another fight. So that's more wear and tear on an already, you know, long amateur and pro career. So I don't know, like the way I see Canelo winning the fight, the way things are going, like Golovkin's definitely been getting tired a lot more later in the fights. You know, when you look at Danny Jacobs, how he came on strong towards the end, and even Canelo in that fight, like when Golovkin needed to push in that fight, it was Canelo who was pushing, you know, down the stretch. But going back to the blood test and the drug test, and it kind of gets brushed swept under the car. It's kind of like in boxing anyway. Boxing's not as strict as other sports when it comes to bans and stuff like that, and
which is ridiculous. I know you've talked about it before. Like that, your life is
just
in jeopardy.
There will be tested now. They've signed a Favada in this, and I read that Golovkin has been tested 18 times since this fight has been signed. 12 urine tests and 6 blood tests. Yeah. So you'd imagine that that came from Golovkin's team. So you'd imagine that Canelo's been done the same. But it's what you do out of camp that can really have the benefits, because when you don't get tested out of training camp or out of contract for fights, and you can have all these benefits where you build your and then they will carry into training camp. You know, so. I don't know. Boxing has a lot of issues with doping, and they have to really tackle it. But there's no real will because there's so much money involved. There's no real will.
People want to see Canelo and Golovkin.
They want to see fights, and the money that's the money that's involved in this, in the sport in general. It's like no one wants to cancel fights or big events because their livelihoods depend on it.
So we've obviously watched the fight back a few times. Obviously, Canelo's camp and Golovkin's camp have watched it back several times. Is Golovkin going to change anything, do you think?
One simple thing he could have done, and I've watched the fight, and I think Barry Jones says it in commentary, and I spoke with Sugar Hill last night. I was talking to him about the fight, the Kronk coach. When Golovkin was pressing, he got Canelo to the ropes, he threw a right hand every time he threw it straight. He never once looped it. And all Canelo was doing was drifting off to his left. Like, conventionally against a strong puncher with a right hand, you move away from the right hand. So you move to your right, you know. But Canelo was always... I don't know what they saw, but whatever tactics they had, it was to move to his left. From the start of the fight, he was moving to the left. And that's the harder side to move to. It's more draining to move to that side, because naturally it's easier to move. If you're an orthodox, it's easier to move to your right because you're almost facing that way. He was moving to his left, and any time Golovkin threw the right hand, he just watched it and he just breezed off, just turned off. And had Golovkin turned his right hand into a hook, a long hook, he might have caught him, but he never did it. He never really did it once, and like it was such an easy adjustment to make that he might do that. But
body shots.
I don't know.
He didn't throw body shots.
Yeah, because all these things that you can't do. Look at the jab. Like the Golovkin jab is probably been his best weapon in these last 5 or 6 fights. But you look at Lemieux, Jacobs, he breaks those guys down with jabs. But he couldn't jab because, Canelo was winning the jab battle, and he was getting counted every time he jabbed. You know, he would throw one jab and he was getting caught with 3 or 4 shots in return, and an angle of shots. Like, it's hard to see what Golovkin does differently. he's going to have to make some adjustments somewhere. He's going to have to go for it from the start, and he's going to have to eat a bit. He's going to have to take a bit, because Canelo will be sharp, razor sharp, and especially in those early rounds. He's going to have to take some punishment and just bound for it. Like, Canelo can't maintain that kind of focus and athletic punching for that many rounds. That's why he does tire, and usually has a period in fights where he has to take some time off, and he sees, like, even against like Cotto, where that was with Canelo Cotto, that was a close fight, but they gave it to Canelo. So because in that fight he was taking a lot of rounds off.
Yeah.
Because when you kind of fight with that explosive, when you rely on explosive energy, you have to throw your punches, 5-6 bursts, bam, 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 and then you have to just breathe and you have to pace yourself and move around, and it exacts from you. It takes it out of you. And he's always going to have periods, Canelo, where he's going to have to take rounds off or parts of rounds off, and that's where Golovkin's going to have to work.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you about was Golovkin's footwork, because it doesn't get talked about an awful lot, but Cal Burke has spoken about it before, and it's more we compare him to Sean Porter in the sense that Sean Porter is reckless and it's robust pressure, he's just coming forward, throwing shots. Whereas Golovkin, because you're aware of the power he has and he's always in position, you're almost obliged to throw a shot when you don't want to.
Yeah, that's what he done when I fought him in the amateurs. He presses you. He gets so close to you, you're uncomfortable, and you throw a punch out of panic, out of stress and anxiety, you let a punch go, and next thing you know, he slipped it, and he's just waiting for that punch to come. He slipped it, and he's bang, bang, bang. He's hitting you with 3 or 4. But he's always in position. And what it does for most fighters, like I said, it's mental pressure.
Yeah.
Because you never get that reprieve. Where most fighters they throw an exchange and they move around and then they come back together. It doesn't happen with him. He's on you all the time. But what Canelo was kind of, for want of a better way, he just nothinged it. He just nothinged it. He just rode the punches, took them on the gloves when he did. He didn't really get hit too clean in that fight. To say that he was in there with Golovkin, the best middleweight in the world. Canelo was still improving as a middleweight. Going into that fight, he was in there with the best middleweight in the world, and he didn't really. You could say he got hit maybe a handful of times clean.
Yeah, the more eye-catching punches, if you watch any of the highlights, it's always Canelo's big right hands and
the uppercuts.
Yeah,
they
were very successful then.
The counters.
There's one that did the rounds of he knocked James Kirkland out with his right hand, he knocked Amir Khan out with, you can maybe discount that one.
Yeah.
And then Golovkin is unmoved by the same shot. How demoralising is that? You're obviously a big puncher. If you land on someone and they're just unperturbed by it, is that kind of...
Yeah, it was happening for both guys though, and it happened for Golovkin too. Golovkin landed his shots, and when a good shot is landed because a fighter will shake his head. It's his little tell, did that
a few times.
Yeah. Both of them were at it, and there were little exchanges between them, looks and glints in the eyes and half smiles at you. You knew they were hurting each other. But it is. It takes a lot of resolve when you've landed your best punch and the guy just keeps coming. You have to say, okay, let's pull up my socks here, pull up my shorts, and roll these gloves up a bit more, and I'll catch him with the next one. But they were landing heavy shots, and there was if any, Canelo was the better body puncher in the first fight. It's I feel convicted that I'm talking so positively about Canelo, especially since he's tested positive for drugs after this fight, and that he's going into this one off the back of that. But and Golovkin would be a friend of mine, and all the people in K2, Tom Loeffler and all those guys, I'd be very close with them. But from a neutral point of view, I think Canelo was probably the favourite going into the fight.
And
what's your prediction?
I think Canelo's going to win as well. If it takes the same pattern as the first fight, I think Canelo's just that little bit fresher. People forget it's 12 months. It's a long time has gone by. It was kind of with the David Hay, Tony Bellew, obviously different level of quality there, but it was almost discounted the big gap in between, and what had gone on. So I just think Canelo can make more adjustments to win this fight at this stage of his career than Golovkin can.
Yeah, and it'd be a sad way for Golovkin to start. He already is on the decline, you can tell, but he's been at the very, very top. When I say he's on the decline, you're talking...
Yeah, it's relative,
Yeah.
Still the best middleweight in the world.
Yeah,
but he's not as dominant as he once was, that kind of way, yeah.
Is it a case that he has to knock him out to win? Is that what we're thinking?
Abel Sanchez has built his brand on Mexican style, and it was almost as if you made the point there that maybe Golovkin landed a big shot and Canelo was unmoved, and he thought, I might revert to type here and go back to my amateur boxing style, and he basically won the fight, you know, at distance. We were talking about getting Canelo into position, but once he got him there, it was just single shots. This time he's just going to have to get his nose in there maybe, and like take chances, take some to give some.
Yeah, it'll be. He spoke about going for the knockout. You know, he won't allow it to go to the scorecards again. That could be saying it and doing it is two different things, you know. Yeah. But there will be small adjustments that he can make. You know, I said it's hard to see what he can do differently. It will be the footwork. You know, it'll be going in and out of range more so. And you know, when he's had the series of fights where he's fought guys where he's been able to walk them down, throw punches, never be conscious or think too much about what's coming back at him because they haven't had any venom, you know. And then he goes in with a guy like Canelo who's from the off is stinging him, and he realises, okay, I'm getting hurt here, and this guy's not standing around, you know. Even though I'm manoeuvring him, he still has exits. So he'll have to be more switched on from the start. He's going to have to use better footwork. Like when they first come out for the first round of the first fight, they both had a good bounce in their step, but as the fight wore on, they both kind of settled into like a more step-in routine. Golovkin should try and, if he can, keep that kind of bounce in his feet to where he can dart in and out of distance and not look for one attack, because Canelo will always fire back. And what Golovkin used to do as an amateur was he'd come with one attack, you'd fire back at him, and he was always out of range but in position to come back at you again. And that's what he's going to have to do, kind of revert back to his amateur style, because if Golovkin was fighting him as the amateur that he used to be, he would win the fight, you know. And I think so. Yeah, he was a sensational amateur, Golovkin. He didn't win the Olympics, but he came up against a very experienced Russian guy, Bekov, and it was just a match of styles and a little bit of politics too.
Yeah, and rematch psychology is obviously interesting because like, is this going to be round 13, or is it kind of going to assume a similar pattern feeling out process at the start? Because we talked about Gatti Ward there earlier. It's like it was basically just 30 rounds in a row, like there was no feeling out process. But you had one with Brian Veer, obviously. Was it kind of did you just like, was the slate wiped clean and you just assumed it again?
For me, it was because I'd fought the wrong fight the first time, and I just the second fight I did what I should have done the first time, and it was a completely different fight. But like you said, it's hard to see where these guys can make adjustments. If they do, there'll only be slides, so it might be round 13. But the difference in this fight is that the history that's happened now, the failed drug test, the cancellation of the fight that should have been in May, and that's bred some bad blood between them. You know, you've seen the quotes from Golovkin talking about respect, and Canelo doesn't respect the sport, and anybody he cheats the fans, and anybody who follows him, what did he call them? Swindlers. That was what Golovkin said. And then Canelo fired back with a nice little line. He said, how many champions has Golovkin fought? Very few. That's not respecting the sport. So there is a little bit of bad blood there now.
Yeah, like the first one was
and people like, you know, Golovkin's had this good boy image, you know. Golovkin, good boy, the GGG. But now he's kind of coming, he's shown a little bit of metal. And that's always been there, but now it's nice to see him be himself and be honest.
Definitely.
But is there a chance that with that in mind, he's going to have so much fire in his belly? I know obviously he has to keep calm in the ring, but determination, he's going to go from the first bell, because in the first fight it was all about who's going to control the centre of the ring, and Canelo stood there with him, and gradually as the fight went, you know, he drops back, he gets on the ropes a bit, but he's not taking too much of a punishment. So does Canelo come out from round one this time and say, right, I am going to make sure that this fight doesn't go to the judges' scorecards, and, you know, I'm going to show you about respect?
It's funny because it's always trotted out like these guys straight up don't like each other, that kind of thing. But did you ever find that was a real motivating factor, or did you find it easier to be dispassionate about it?
Yeah, it's always easier.
Adam Booth is such a calculated guy that he would kind of discourage that kind of thing, would he?
And I don't think I fought too many people that I didn't really like, you know, or respect. But I think it's always better to have. Well, you can't let emotion. As soon as you allow emotion in a fight, you've lost, because you have to shut that part off. You can't fight. Emotion is an energy that will only take you so far, and in a fight it might translate to 2 or 3 rounds. Because once that's drained out of you, you got nothing left. If you're trying to feed off emotion as an energy source, it won't last. Definitely a finite thing. So these guys are going to have to be cool and calculated. And once the bell goes, it'll all be business.
Is it for the good of boxing though? We need Golovkin to win.
Yeah, well, see, it's kind of like, who cares? If Canelo wins, do people really care about his failed drug test? We do. The media do. People in general do. But do fight fans really? The fact that the governing bodies don't care, that they're allowing this fight to happen. It's for all the belts. It's for the biggest prize in boxing. So they have to set the tone. They have to make make the punishment match the crime. For us to care, I don't know. It's a nasty one. I'm sure Golovkin cares, when he thinks he's had that tough fight and he was in there with a guy who might have been doping.
Yeah.
So predictions wise, I think you've already said it there, but so as heart says Golovkin, head says Canelo, is that kind of the general vibe?
Yeah,
It's still a toss-up.
I'm still sticking with Golovkin because I'm expecting a better performance from him this time. Maybe it is the heart. Maybe the heart's too strong that I can't think with the head.